We go through and grade every draft pick of the Chicago Bears next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron, and happy draft day. Happy everything. It was a great weekend. We had the draft. I actually turned 30, so it was a big milestone for me. The family, we went out for a little bit. We went to a hotel, hung out, rode some water slides, all a good time. So I'm actually recording this a couple days after the draft. I know a lot of people wanted to get their stuff in immediately. I wanted it to kind of sink in a little bit more before breaking down some of these draft picks because like I said at the very beginning, we're going through all the draft picks. We're going through, and not just like pick by pick, but kind of going through more of the strategy that Ryan Poles kind of had because we talked about this going into the draft. What is Ryan Poles going to be trying to do? How is he going to be trying to build this roster? And there's a lot of things that this draft says about the type of people that we want to have on this team, but also how Ryan Poles wanted to attack the draft and how he wanted to bring in certain types of talent to make this team better. So let's get right into it and start talking a little bit about, rather than going through the first pick, I actually want to go through the first two selections for the Chicago Bears during this draft. And the first two selections were both defensive backs. Now, were you shocked when this happened? We talked about this a little bit on the draft podcast with our profiles and our mock drafts, how I personally thought that the Bears were going to get Brisker with the first, second round pick. I think Brisker, a lot of people either loved him or they had him kind of back of the second round. So getting him in the middle at pick 48 with your second round pick, I thought was incredible value. But then also kind of a shock going Kyler Gordon with pick 39. So you have two defensive backs. I know a lot of people were thrown off because there's a lot of wide receivers on the board. Now, before we get into that, I just want to talk about these picks. And I think that this really shows like the reason why we said Brisker is because we didn't have a starting safety. Love DHC. I think Crookshank is a pretty good player. But what we're doing is that we need to make sure that we solidify this. I saw a stat that the Chicago Bears let up, I think, the most touchdowns from a cornerback, or most passing touchdowns, or second most ever for the Chicago Bears. We let up a lot of passing touchdowns last season, basically, and our corners were usually at fault. And it makes sense. We had Duke Shelley and we had Kendall Vildor as our cornerbacks. We needed to get better. So what did we do? We added Kyler Gordon, the cornerback out of the Washington Huskies. We've talked about him a little bit before, but just a really big freak. So he's only 5'11", 6 foot, depending on if you're rounding up or rounding down, about 190 to 200 pounds. So not the biggest of people, but incredible burst. So we talked about it too. His eyes are probably his biggest negative. He really kind of trusts more of his athletic ability than his smart. So can you coach him up a little bit more so that he can really kind of leverage his eyes? And then you have a good player. He's an aggressive guy, and I love him in a cover two system because, yet again, he's a short area, quick burst type of player. And if you get him in a cover two where he just has to sit down, be physical, either run up and make some tackles, or just kind of sit and have that short area burst, you really like this guy inside of this system. So a high upside player. A lot of people had him as a first round talent, and he dropped because people expected him to test crazily at the combine. So when people saw a 4.5 140, they're like, yeah, I don't really want him. So he dropped to the Bears, and we're like, yeah, sure, we'll pick him up. And then that's where like it makes sense. And honestly, I grade it a B plus because the cornerbacks, when you looked at the cornerbacks that were kind of off the board, Kyler Gordon definitely was the best player available, and they picked him up, and it's an area of need. Now you solidify him. He can be your outside corner, or if Tavon Young, kind of always kind of banged up, if you don't love him in the slot, Gordon can also play slot. So you have a lot of positional versatility. And even if Thomas Graham Jr., let's say that he just blows up, they see him in training camp, they're like, this guy's a beast. Gordon gives you the flexibility that you want at that position. So whoever comes up, or if you want to sign an extra free agent, if you don't love Young, then you're able to do that. But really, you're looking at these cornerbacks and you go, we have Tavon Young at the slot, we have Kyler Gordon on the outside, and Jalen Johnson. You feel a lot better. Your biggest weakness last year, your corners, are not one of the bigger strengths on this defense. And then that's why, kind of going back, we see the Bears drafting Jaquan Brisker. I gave this an A minus. I could even give this an A. I love the selection because, like I said before, I like the ability to bring in a player that can play opposite Eddie Jackson. We don't know how long Eddie Jackson will be here. If he doesn't show up this year, I could see him shown out the following year. So it's really a put up or shut up time for Eddie Jackson. And now you have a guy that can be a starter with him rather than just a one and done. Last time he had and then he has an Adrian Amos that was in with him last time, and they were phenomenal together. And now you have Brisker, who should be that guy. Brisker is somebody who plays and attacks downfield amazingly. He has great short area quickness, wants to go in and make some tackles, can play in the box. But I love him in the cover two system because he's so great at breaking on the ball. So at the cover two, a lot of times you're playing in front of you. And I think that Jaquan Brisker will really be able to thrive in this system. He also has phenomenal coverage grades. PFF has posted all sorts of coverage grades on him. A very good cover guy. So, good cover guy that can come up and make tackles. 6'1, 200 pounds. So, not the biggest of guys, but really good size for a safety, a little quick. So, I love this because I think you solidify the secondary and you have good players that are kind of the foundation building this team for the future. So, I love it. Even though that we have the two separates overall, it's kind of like an A type of build. You had this weakness on defense and you made it better. But the elephant in the room, the wide receivers. Why the heck didn't we get one? Because we had George Pickens on the board. We had Skye Moore on the board. A lot of people were thinking he was going in the end of the first, and here he is falling to both Chicago Bears picks, and we don't pull the trigger on him. What happened with that? Or even some people love Alec Pierce. And to me, I get that, but I know that there was a lot of people that did not like George Pickens. By people, I mean scouts. Some people did not like his attitude. The Bears could be one of those teams that just did not like his attitude, did not think that he was made for professional football. That could have been their rationale for not taking him. Another reason, too, Jaquan Brisker might have just been the highest guy on their board, and they go, he's still available? Fine, sign me up. I want a starting safety. Why not? And just kind of signed him and added him to the team. But also, too, I want to bring this up is that there's also a lot of good wide receivers still available. You have a Julio Jones, you have, not the same Julio Jones, but then you have a Jarvis Landry, a very productive slot player. Will Fuller, we've talked about him before in long time ago in the beginning of free agency as a pretty good fit, a very good speedster, commonly injured, but still somebody who could be a good fit for this offense. So there's still many other ones like Keelan Cole, lots of good wide receivers that the Bears can still bring in as at the wide receiver position. So overall, Bears didn't pull the trigger on the wide receiver. I was a little shocked, but I wasn't necessarily disappointed because I like Brisker that much. So moving on to the third pick. So in the third round, we finally go wide receiver. And we go Vietlis Jones Jr. out of Tennessee, 6 foot, 200 pounds, and going to be 25 years old in a week. I know this is coming from a 30-year-old, but 25 is old for a rookie. If you think about it, if he's got a 4-year contract, he's going to be out of his first deal at the ripe old age of 29. That's not great because you think about like an Allen Robinson. He made it, I think he just signed at 29 years old and he already had 2 deals. This is his second big contract that he was able to sign. So you have somebody that was doing well against younger competition. There is something to be said about the big age gap. But Velus Jones Jr. is really a speedster, straight line speed guy, and just breaks it down. What I always kind of he reminds me a little bit of Deebo Samuel, where he's a big home run threat. Gives you a lot of greatness on the kick return ability. That seemed to be a big thing that you could tell that the Bears were trying to add. And when they called him up too, They said we need some speed. So that's a big indication that speed is one of the big things that they want at that position. And the reason why, like, I don't love this pick is because Jones, I think, was more of a fourth round or even a fifth round type of guy that you could be adding in. And if you really wanted someone that was explosive, I love Calvin Austin out of Memphis. So if you wanted a gadget guy, wanted an explosive guy, I personally would have went there. Also, Vietlis Jones is not the most agile of people. If you watch him run, I was joking with my family, he runs like me, and that's not a good thing. I can run fast, but I can't juke. If you look at me, you're like, yeah, that guy can't juke. I am not a agile person, and neither is Velus Jones Jr., relatively speaking to NFL players. He really doesn't have a lot of good agility or quickness, and that is something that you're a little bit nervous about when he tries to become a better route runner or other things like that. He can still take the top off the defense, outrun people, make those big plays still, like he was capable at Tennessee, but it's just something that I get a little bit nervous about when watching his tape. And so for that, I give it a C minus. I thought that there was some better Jalen Tolbert. I liked a little bit more. Thought there was better players. Also, there was better value at other positions. I felt. But honestly, I want to mention this too. It seems like this was their guy. They wanted to get Jones and they wanted him there. So I'm curious if the Bears were trying to trade down because every pick seemed to come down to 1 minute. They were the only team that did that, and I loved it. So the Bears, I could see them. Obviously, nothing has come out. I think that maybe they were trying to trade down and try to get into that fourth round range and select him then. And they're like, this is our guy. So we need to add him. So that personally what I think might have been going on in my magical fairy world because I see it going so late and them kind of taking a big swing, saying, this is our guy that we wanted to add. I heard a rumor too that this was also Justin Fields' guy that he wanted as well. Like I said, a rumor. Don't take it with a just take it with a grain of salt. But if that is the case, it makes sense even more that the Bears would want to sign or draft Velus Jones because, hey, Justin Fields, welcome to the team. This is your boy. Let's bring him in. So overall, C minus though. Still don't love the selection, even though that it is a wide receiver. So now Ryan Poles did one of my favorite things that he did, just trading down, kept trading down, traded a six next year, which I didn't love, but and then got 2 sevenths in return. But then you saw him just literally trade the next two fifth rounders and then accumulate some six rounders, then trade again and accumulate another draft pick. Like, and just the trading down, this is what I love about it. This is where it becomes a crapshoot. Like early on, you can scout a lot of talent and you can say, this guy's got all the traits. This guy is definitely someone that fits our scheme. And as you go later on, this is where it becomes the crapshoot. This is where it becomes like majority of these players are not going to be good. The seventh, like look at historically seventh rounders. You go, I have no idea who these people are. They might be just special teamers, potentially backups. Rarely any of those are going to be starters. So when you have these picks, what it shows me is that he's trying to build his team. He talked about the importance of building through the draft, kind of building that team. And to me, that's what he set out to do. And I love it. He built this team. He's bringing in his guys that can kind of build his roster rather than just having a bunch of Ryan Pace guys. So I love, absolutely love that he traded down. I don't think that's reflected in enough draft grades because I think that is so important that even though I don't love a lot of these picks, like, oh my God, this is the best. I love the trading down and accumulating talent for this team right now. Because yet again, next year we could be Super Bowl contenders. This year, probably not so much. So I like the ability to kind of bring in your guys and make it better. But let's go with our first. Actually, we're just going to group some of these picks because this is another thing that I love from Ryan Poles. Don't put all of your eggs into one basket going late. Like we said, this is a crapshoot. So what is he doing? He's saying, all right, if I have a 1 in 4 shot of hitting on some people, I'm going to draft 4 offensive linemen. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring in these offensive linemen. So His first offensive lineman that he brought in and drafted was Braxton Jones at pick 168 in the fifth round, an offensive lineman out of Southern Utah Thunderbirds, 6'7, 310. Very tall, super, super long arms. And a lot of people, when they watch his tape, that's the key thing. When you watch his tape, he's very good, very explosive, very athletic. Definitely, a lot of people say, well, he's a project. But when you see him go against some better talent, you see him and you go, well, he's probably not that far off. He's probably not that far off from being able to play. I saw a lot of scouts say he's going to be a starter sometime throughout his rookie deal, which you love to see out of someone that you kept trading down for in the fifth round. That's why I think that I really like this pick because he's got the top end potential that you can have on this team. So maybe you don't want to have Cody Whitehair for another year or so because he's pretty expensive. So Braxton Jones can play all sorts of different positions. What I love about him too is a lot of times when you get somebody, they project to be a guard. Braxton Jones can be a tackle. He's got the length, like I said, phenomenal length, phenomenal explosiveness. So I really like him. I really like this pick. I'm actually going to give it an A minus. I had it as B plus in my notes, but honestly, talking about it, you got somebody that a lot of people love. PFF had him ranked 110, and you get him at 168. Tremendous value for this type of player. And it wasn't just PFF. I actually am eventually going to roll out. I have a consensus. I kind of did a consensus big board from different sources and showed how good of a pick it was. Braxton Jones was one of the top picks that the Bears made. That was 27 picks better than what a lot of people thought, 48 lower than the average draft position. So tremendous value, tremendous picks for Ryan Poles there with Braxton Jones, and especially trading down and getting him. Then next, I'm just going to go through the offensive line. I'm going to be jumping around a little bit. You've probably already seen some of the order. I'm actually just going to go around with these offensive linemen. So you have Braxton Jones, who can be a tackle for you. Then you come back and you get Zachary Thomas in the sixth round, seventh pick, so 186 overall from San Diego State. Now, Zachary Thomas is someone that was playing left tackle, but also projects best to guard. He also played a little right tackle, I believe, too, and just a phenomenal zone blocker. PFF graded him a 90 overall zone blocking grade. So that's just absolutely incredible. Played all five positions, very versatile. PFF's overall 143. A lot of other people loved him as well. And you get him later on in the draft, an absolute tremendous value at 186, a guy that can play that right guard and definitely compete against Dakota Dozier for a starting job. He's very good, great size, and that's why I really like this pick. And yet again, you're throwing darts at the dartboard, but if you have four darts that you're throwing, that's pretty good. Braxton Jones, Thomas, you're hoping one of these guys does something for you. And then later on, we get Doug Kramer, the center out of Illinois. We picked him sixth round, pick 207. And this is yet again another guy that you're bringing in that I think he's a really good scheme fit. Now, when you look at a lot of boards, people hated on him. Now, a big reason is because he's very, 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 very limited. Good thing the position that we need him for fits exactly what he needs. We want a center. Yes, we have Lucas Patrick, but I see him as the replacement for Mustafa. You have Lucas Patrick, Doug Kramer can come in. And that's why if you look at other consensus boards or other draft boards out there, people hate him because he is a smaller center. He's an only center that can play in a outside zone. So a very kind of Shanahanian type of system. Luckily, we're probably going to be running a Shanahan type of system. So that's why I really like this pick for the Chicago Bears. Other places don't like this, and that's why a lot of people might hate this pick because he should be a very good fit in our system. Explosive athlete. Watching him on the tape, you're like, man, this guy's good. 5-year, I believe 5-year starter. Let me just pull up my notes. Yeah, he's a 5-year starter at Illinois. So absolutely incredible. And lot of skill, a lot of experience at that center position. And that's why I think he can definitely come in, be a good contributor for this team, beat out a Sam Mustipher, maybe kick him off the roster, and really upgrade at that backup center spot. Who knows? Maybe he's absolutely incredible and the Bears want him to start. That's far fetched, but still, I think that he gives you good depth. And yet again, you're building a team, you're building a roster, you're building depth. And that's why I do like this pick. And I'm actually going to give it a B because even though that a lot of people aren't as high on him, I'm high on him in this system because, yet again, system is super key. And for him in this system, I like it. You're getting somebody and you're making your team better. Not saying he's going to be a starter like day one, but he's somebody that can be a backup, somebody that can be a contributor for this team and make the active roster in the 6th round. That's pretty good. And then the last guy, and then we'll actually go back to the normal draft order, and that's going to be Jatyree Carter out of Southern University, 6'5". In my numbers, they have 275, but I believe he was, around the 300s. But really, out of Southern University, a good player. Yet again, some people were a little bit higher on him, some people were a little bit lower on him, but this was generally the range a lot of people thought he was going to be going. He's a tackle that could eventually be a guard. He played a lot of guard during the Senior Bowl or Shrine Bowl types of practices. And I watched a lot of that tape. I even believe I posted it out. Very good player. I thought that watching some of this, yet again, a small school guy. I know PFF thought it was pretty good. He's a big pass blocker. He had almost a 95 grade in pass blocking, which is absolutely nuts. He is very good at that. He's very good with feet. So you're saying, hey, if we could get this guard that can play left guard, right guard, yet again, you're bringing in one center, you're bringing in one guy who's definitely more of a tackle in Braxton Jones, and then you're bringing Zachary Thomas, who can play tackle and also kind of guard, and then you bring in Jatyree Carter, who's probably going to shift more towards that guard role. You're starting to create competition. You're starting to say, Dieter Iselin, you shouldn't be the backup. We have these other guys that we're bringing, and you're starting to fill this roster out. So to me, I like it. I like it. I don't love it. I give it a B minus. B minus C plus. I think it's a solid pick. You're not jumping over a lot of other places, and it's also very up in the air. That's why it's kind of a C plus type of rating, but it's out in the 7th. So I definitely jumped around, but I just wanted to call this out because I love what the Bears did with the offensive line. Because imagine this, if they went with someone in the 3rd and they said, we're done, what if that guy doesn't pan out? What if that guy isn't that great? In the 3rd round, it's not a surefire bet that this player is going to be incredible. So that's why I love, like, yeah, you didn't go high, but you're able to bring in all this extra talent that can compete and fill out your roster. And if all goes to heck, bring in a veteran. Bring in like what we did with Jason Peters. Bring someone in, and then you're able to kind of shift some people around. There's plenty of people, Dwayne Brown, Jason Peters, plenty of people that you can bring in, maybe at left tackle spot, shift Tevin Jenkins to right, move Borum to the right guard, have a competition. There's lots of things that Poles can still do and bring in some of those veterans to manipulate this roster and really kind of make it more well-rounded. If some of these rookies aren't exactly what you think inside of that rookie mini camp or even at the very beginning stages of training camp. But I jumped around. So Braxton Jones, Dominique Robinson, actually we haven't touched Dominique Robinson. Dominique Robinson was the other 5th round pick. So kind of resetting for those just to kind of reset the board. We had Kyler Gordon go first, Jaquan Brisker, the safety out of Penn State, Vietlis Jones. Then we have Braxton Jones, the very next one. And then in the 5th round, pick 31, 174 overall, the Bears go Dominique Robinson, the defensive end out of Miami. And now this was ranked as the best pick by the Chicago Bears, according to the consensus big boards and my data. It was 51 picks above any other mock draft or the big boards, consensus big board. So people loved that selection. And then the average draft position was 2 rounds after where he was being projected of going. Yet again, very phenomenal pick because you draft him, you were trading down, and you end up picking up this highly talented player. There's not a lot of tape on him, but he is someone to be excited about. He is a project player. Think of him very similarly to a Travis Gibson. Remember Travis? He did not do well, never really played his first year, hardly on the field, just never played. But then last year, we saw that promise. We saw that development that we wanted. Think of Dominique Robinson as an investment. We're probably not going to see him next year because you have this guy who's a former wide receiver, very explosive athlete, 6'4, 250, just a very, very explosive athlete at that edge spot. Didn't really even start all that much for Miami of Ohio, where he played college football, which is a little shocking, but it might just be because he needs that better coaching. And the Bears are saying, hey, we can bring you in, we can teach you, we can maybe find a role for you, but the upside is just absolutely tremendous. A freak of nature athletically, jumped 41 inches in the vertical. Absolutely incredible. Only played 541 career snaps and didn't have amazing production, but just shows you all the traits that you want in an outside edge rusher. So a lot of people said too, when you met him, when you saw him play, it is different. You just see the natural progression. So to that, it gets you excited. That's why next year, I don't think he's really going to do much. But overall, you take the upside, you're taking that upside, and a lot of people really love that. So to me, I'm actually giving this a B plus. Like I said, this is the best projected pick that the Bears had. It's a good pick, but you're not going to see much out of him next year. He's more of a depth piece. So I don't expect it to see a lot of him, but still a good pick. So the next pick, we went through Zachary Thomas at 186, and then we selected Treston Ebner, the running back out of Baylor at pick 203 in the sixth round, late sixth pick. So here's one of the picks that we traded and we acquired. So yet again, rather than just having one six rounder being Zach Thomas or Zachary Thomas, what we end up getting is Treston Ebner. Now, this was a little bit of a shock. A lot of people didn't love this pick, but this kind of just yet again shows what type of player Ryan Poles is trying to get. He's trying to get shifty, he's trying to get fast, he's trying to get versatile. Treston Ebner was someone that didn't just play running back. You were able to line him up at wide receiver. He was also, yet again, another returner. What we said is we want to get people that are explosive, that can take the top off of defenses and make big plays. That's what the Bears saw with them, and they said that's the type of player we want on this team, and they picked him up. So I can't really fault them too much because they've shown that they have a type. They didn't want a possession receiver. They didn't want possession players. They want someone that is explosive, that can contribute at multiple levels. So Treston Ebner, he can be a special teamer. He can return. He can also field if you need him to make tackles or make blocks. So he's very versatile, most likely going to make the roster and be able to fill many different roles. Like we said, wide receiver, running back. You can see him in a lot of different packages and throw off the defense a little bit. And I think that's what they're trying to do with a player like this. Keep in mind, too, Aaron Jones in the Packers offense caught a lot of passes, played a little bit of wide receiver as well. They tried to be a little versatile, not insanely versatile with him, but he has some versatileness, and that's probably why they really liked this type of player. He had almost 300 yards last year and receiving, and almost 800 yards rushing. So really a versatile weapon that they used at Baylor. So I don't love this pick because I thought it was a little bit high for him. So I'm giving it about a C. I like the versatility that he provides. Not saying I hate it, not saying that I love it, but I just think that it was a little bit too high for it. That's the only reason why I'm not giving it a higher grade. But then the next pick was at pick 207 in the sixth round, and that was Doug Kramer. Already talked about him. Really like that selection. When we're talking about scheme, very good scheme fit. That's the reason why you saw a lot of people not like him because he's very scheme specific. Then Jatiri Carter at pick 226, and now we're in the seventh round, or Jatiri Carter was in the seventh round. And the thing too that I want to just call out with this seventh round is it's really about just getting people that you like. Because you're going into the undrafted rookie free agents, and a lot of times these UDFAs say, I just want to be a UDFA. That's what I think Carson Strong was saying was like, don't draft me. I want to pick the team that I go to. So sometimes those top people are saying that. They don't want to be selected. So that's why you don't see a Kellen Diesch being signed from Arizona State in these late rounds because he's probably saying, let me test free agency, so to speak. Let me go out to the team that I want to go to or select that rather than being picked to some crappy team that I never wanted to go to and I make next to nothing. A lot of these are your picks, your guys that you want to add on. So Carter seemed to be that kind of high upside guy, taking their guy that they wanted on their team. And the next pick, Elijah Hicks, the safety out of California Golden Bears, was definitely seemed to be their guy. He was not on a lot of draft boards. He was one of the worst rated picks that the Bears selected, even though that was in the 7th round. But I don't really take too much stock in that because this was the guy that they wanted. And if you've seen him on Instagram, he's hilarious. Absolute firecracker of a human being. Absolutely crazy. And I love to see it because you have this fiery guy that would definitely fit well in this offense. Even though that we have 4 safeties on this roster, I still think he's able to compete, and he's also able to potentially be he was a cornerback that moved to safety, so there is a little bit of versatility there, but still can be somebody that plays a role on special teams. And like I said, firecracker. And what I didn't know was he was a multi-year starter at California, and I was shocked to not see him on more boards. When you watch the film, I'm like, he's got some good explosiveness. He's got some good coverage skills. Matter of fact, last year he had an 89.4 PFF grade, where that's absolutely crazy. And he was playing all over the defense. So I don't get why more teams weren't high on this guy. So I actually kind of like this selection. I think that it took me off guard, but the more that I watched him, the more I'm like, this guy could be a contributor. This guy could be on this roster, make this roster, and maybe it might just be some of the athletic testing. He's not the biggest of guys, 5'11", 200. That's similar to Jaquan Brisker, just 2 inches shorter. 5'11" is fairly short for a safety, but still, I think that he could at least play and at least contribute. So to me, yet again, don't love the selection. But still you're just kind of securing him as a Bear. So to me, kind of C plus, um, just because I didn't like the pick when I saw it, but after watching it a little bit more, I like at least his tape. Was really surprised with his tape overall when comparing him to other prospects that I saw out there. And the last one, we got to talk about this. Last selection to round it all out, pick 255, Trenton Gill, the punter out of North Carolina State Wolfpack. You got him 6'4", 219, like it matters his size and weight. But Trenton Gill, I love this pick. And I know that he's not the best punter that's out there. Trust me, I would have loved Punt God, Matt Ariza, and everything like that. But we talked about punters. We talked about punters, unfortunately slash fortunately, because I did the deep dive, and I believe it was 100% of punters get get drafted play for their team the following season. So to me, he's going to be our starting punter because we invested a draft pick in him. But secretly, low key, big brain move by Ryan Poles. I actually really like this move because you draft a punter at the very end of the draft. Do you know what that means? It's not just, hey, we drafted a punter. It means you have probably one of the least important positions on the field, if not one of the least important field besides long snapper. But you get him very cost controlled for multiple years. Multiple years. I just want to put this into perspective. Pat O'Donnell right now is getting paid $2 million to punt a football for the Green Bay Packers. Our punter is projected to make $700,000. So 0.7 million compared to 2 million, a savings of 1.3 million. And we have this guy on contract for 4 years. So it's probably going to go up a little bit, but it might only max out at 1 million. We don't have all the contract details, but that number is projected by SpotRack. So you're giving this person $1.3 million less than the punter that you would have had. So you're saving 1.3 million that could be used somewhere else. That could be used as an extra signing bonus. That's good. That's a good chunk of change. So to me, I think it's brilliant. I think it's super big brain move by Ryan Poles there. So I love this move. And let's actually talk about the punter a little bit. So I have some stats up that I used during that episode. And the most impressive thing is that 35.4% of his punts were fair catches, which is what you want to see. And also 47.7% of his punts were inside the 20. And that's incredible. That's absolute incredible numbers that you want out of your punter. So to me, I love that. I love the selection of him because I think that, yet again, you have a cheap punter, you have him for multiple years, and also he showed that he's accurate. So to me, if he ends up being trash, you can get rid of him. You just get rid of him if he's absolute trash. But if he's good, you have a very cost controlled position. You have a cost control player at one of the least important positions. So you don't have to overpay or like double the salary for a player that should hardly see the field when Justin Fields is throwing bombs out there. So to me, I'm actually giving this a B plus. I was tempted to I'll give it an A minus because I really liked it. It's not the best punter out there, but I thought that it was at least a good selection. So overall, though, I didn't love the trade up. So just talking about the trades, I didn't like kind of the quote unquote trade up, the 6 rounder for 2 sevenths. Didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I thought it was very okay, especially now when you see him kind of going after a punter. That makes a little bit more sense because like we already talked about. But I love what he was able to do with trading back. What we've learned about Ryan Poles through this first draft is first off, he wants explosive players. He cares about the people that are more aggressive. You see Kyler Gordon, aggressive, Brisker, aggressive. You want on defense, they want that aggression. But on offense, what you're seeing from the skill players, big plays. That's what they want out of people in college. Velus Jones did that, and Treston Ebner did that, and versatility. So you're able to have these really good players, able to have a lot of flexibility at those positions. And same thing with offensive line. You're getting some big players, maybe from smaller schools that have big upside, but then still like explosiveness. Doug Kramer, explosive. Very quick out of his stance. Braxton Jones, very good athlete that you have out there too. So you got these athletes that you have there. So to me, I just love yet again, you're filling out the roster. You have everybody out there. So overall draft grade. I think that's the big piece because overall when you're looking at this, I like like I said, Kyler Gordon selection like that, Brisker, Vietlis Jones is the only one that I don't love, and Treston Ebner was a little bit too high. I know some people don't love Zachary Thomas, so some people thought it was an amazing pick. Others thought that it was terrible. It's a very bipolar community around Zachary Thomas. So to me, overall, I I kind of give it like a B plus. I think it's a very I'm going to go more B plus. B plus. I'll actually go B plus A minus because the 90%, that's the grade, the 90% grade, because I like what they did. And especially with what you had, I think that what Ryan Poles did was what you wanted to do. You didn't trade up. And thank freaking God, because Ryan Pace would trade up for anybody that he thought was halfway decent and say, this is the guy that we're going with. So to me, I really like what he did. I really like when he traded down. So I'm sticking with it. A minus. I'll give it an A minus because of the trades, because of what our GM did. It's not just about the picks, it's what you did with them. And I thought that he controlled the board well. I thought that he got the guys that he needed. So it's not saying this is going to be the best draft class of all time, that everyone's going to be doing well. But I was impressed. I was impressed with what he did, and I hope that he kind of sticks to that. Stick with being patient, stick with accumulating picks, stick with building a team for at least for next year. And then you can kind of see a little bit more. Still, don't trade up for everything, but it's a very promising start for our guy. So I'll applaud him there. I thought it was very good, came out happy. But let me know what you think. Do you love what he did? Was there a specific selection? Did you think that he should have went wide receiver? But now we'll see. I am actually going to take a week off. Like I said, crazy week before, did a lot of stuff, but probably will just take the week off unless we see the Bears sign somebody, which I think could happen. be on the lookout. Make sure to follow us at Unbearable Sports because we're going to be trying to cover as much as we can with this because we could be signing a veteran wide receiver. We could be signing an offensive lineman. It's going to be very interesting as we see polls try and fill out this roster. So make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and Unbearable Sports Podcast, we're out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a bad chick.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.